Hello everyone, RFG here with the review for Fountains, a top-down combat-focused action RPG developed and published by John Powell, currently available on Steam. Although there are RPG and Souls-like subgenre elements, I felt that Fountains also had much in common with action-adventure games and Metroidvanias, and I'll get into that a bit later. Beginning after entering your name and a short introduction mentioning a usurper rising from within the ranks, you get kicked into a dark pit. There's not much to immediately do, but to pick up the shining object nearby. Picking up this sword prompts you to equip it in the inventory menu. Each swing of your sword will use up a part of your energy meter located near the bottom left of the screen. Your invincible dodge roll will use the meter, and sprinting will gradually deplete it when you're near enemies. Breaking the nearby wooden barricade puts you properly into the usurper's prison, where you'll immediately run into enemies. Defeating them will require proper use of attacks, dodges, and energy management. Successful attacks against enemies will fill portions of your water gauge placed next to your energy meter. Water can be used to heal part of your health bar located next to your water gauge after you've taken damage. Defeated enemies will usually drop coins or other items like consumables or equipment. Items can also be located as shining objects in the environment or traded for in shops. Coins have multiple uses. They can be used as general currency in shops and have other uses throughout the game, such as using them to refill portions of your water gauge at fountains. You start with a limit of 4 portions of water, and resting at a fountain when you're at 0 will restore 1. Fountains can be used as checkpoints and revival points if you lose all of your health, but you can also use them to refill your water gauge at 6 coins per portion. This is as good of a use for your coins as any, since losing all of your health will surrender half of your earned coins before you're revived at your last access fountain. Losing half of your coins after each death may sound harsh, but coin purses of varying amounts can be dropped from enemies and found in the environment. Using a coin purse adds that coin value to your tradable currency, but not using them keeps them stored in your inventory even after a death. You can see the description of acquired items in the bottom right of the menu, including the number of coins gained and using a type of coin purse. These, along with other consumable items, can be slotted to a quick item menu that you can rotate through and use instantly. All items will have a description in the bottom right of the screen. Along with their description, equipment will have their stats shown in the bottom right corner of the same box. Besides swords, you'll also be able to equip armor for your head, body, and legs. Most equipment will only affect your attack, physical, and magic defense, but some will have additional traits to help you decide what's most beneficial for you. Your currently equipped sword, sections of armor, and tools will be shown in the upper right along with your current stats. Tools can have passive effects or have an ability that uses water, but I'll get more into that in a bit. Making your way through the Usurper's Prison is your first step of progress. Venture deeper in and you'll get some story exposition from a character you can meet. Although he explains how the guards lock suspected usurpers into the pit and the growing hostility, he doesn't go too much further into this explanation, but the story gradually unfolds into a tale of the Fountain of Youth, those who use its power, and the role of the usurper. Moving on from the soldier, you should already notice that some areas seem to be just a bit out of reach. There is room for exploration within the prison, despite the limited options you'll see, and that continues once you exit and begin to explore outside in the guard's domain. Fountains has several outdoor areas along with indoor ones. Areas for the most part are interconnected, and enemies that are defeated only respawn after a fountain is accessed. Exploration in the overworld isn't too different from indoor areas. New fountains can serve as checkpoints for you, and new roadblocks can prevent you from following certain paths. Opening up your map lets you mark points of interest to help you keep track of where you might want to return to after making some progress, and activated fountains will be automatically marked. Some of these points of interest might require an item to bypass them, and interacting with characters may provide clues as to what's needed to progress. Characters can also provide assistance in other ways. Items needed for a point of interest may be within a local area, but sometimes what's needed for progression will span across multiple parts of the map. Turning an item into a character for a request may provide you a useful reward, but doesn't always lead to meaningful progression. And getting past a certain point of interest may still require something additional to move forward. Like many adventure games and Metroidvanias, your biggest block in progress isn't necessarily locked doors or needing key items, but by the lack of specific traversal abilities. These abilities are granted through tools, and can allow you to fire a laser beam that can activate a switch from a distance, or a chain hook that can let you cross gaps to give you that necessary access to just out of reach areas. Occasionally you may need to use these tools along with your sword attack to solve traversal or navigational puzzles, and not just as a basic ability of getting from point A to point B. Properly marking your map can help you streamline where to go whenever a tool is found, but getting tools isn't always simple. Many of the traversal tools will be acquired by defeating bosses, and getting to them means navigating past or through enemies. Your equipment can make a difference on proceeding through an area, and like many RPGs, they will have different stats. Unlike many RPGs, newly acquired equipment are rarely meant to be swapped out simply for better stats. Some swords can be upgraded, but like other equipment, these upgrades just make these swords equally viable to other ones you can find in the game, so balancing your equipment through what they offer is more meaningful than just looking for higher stats. Following the trend of playing more like an action-adventure game in Metroidvania, there is no level up system involved. Permanent health gains can be achieved by finding 4 life fragments, and certain equipment may have an attribute that provides bonus health or energy. While more health and versatile equipment is generally helpful, it's the tools and abilities they offer that make the biggest impact on general traversal. Passive and active tool abilities have practical uses in battle and getting around. Most of your combat is centered around close-range sword strikes, so having active abilities definitely helps you to avoid contact with enemies. Passive abilities can overlap with items or equipment, so you can set your character up to where your quick items are only additive to the benefits the rest of your equipment already provides, so coins you've earned can be used and not wasted in deaths. Due to the open-ended design of the game, bosses may vary depending on the tools you have available. Boss fights are always near fountains, so you're able to restock on water if you're low, and can manage your coins and coin purses effectively. This open-endedness also affects your overall progression rate. Some areas may require only one main traversal ability to make good progress, but depending on what other tools you do or don't have, can lead you to explore out-of-the-way areas, or may have you struggle in one section. But more importantly, I didn't feel like there was one active ability that was too useful or too useless. There may be a bit of overlap for some, but each one felt like they had purpose. And that's kind of my overall feel with my time with Fountains. There's actually a really weird kind of balance in the way it's designed, and I do mean that in a good way. Its RPG traits are just enough for me to never really feel like I need to return to an area later due to difficulty, but to tweak my character's setup instead, especially since there isn't an experience and level up system for me to fixate on. Combat isn't always necessary, and it's up to you on whether you want to avoid fights or not, and the use of coins, coin purses, and fountains doesn't take away the challenge, yet still provides a risk-reward scenario when you do take them on. There's also the balance that sword strikes restore water, but the way you can set your tools, equipment, and quick items still provides you your own way to deal with combat or set your loadout for moving through an area. Progress may be determined by what tools you find and when, but having an almost equal amount of usefulness is something to appreciate, and being able to place markers on a map is always helpful. Though traveling long distances did feel somewhat cumbersome. There are a few options to shorten travel time, like two-way portal systems, a similar functioning teleport item, and an underground network that you can use to travel between the inner parts of an area, but these options all felt very limited and sometimes felt like they weren't saving me much time. Fortunately, that time going through each area can be spent admiring the visuals. Each segment of the overworld has its own style, and interior areas have their own looks. Enemies and bosses are plenty varied, and animation is very fluid. I also enjoyed that the equipment does affect your character's sprite. Even the sword swings have a different color animation depending on which weapon is equipped. There are also some nice views presented in the game itself. The lore behind the game is a nice concept, but I don't know if I'd ever got that invested in the story. There are some surprising moments, but the story presented in-game just never really clicked for me, though there are a number of characters that did stick out. I felt close to the same about the music. It mostly relies on its ambient background tracks that fits accordingly, with occasional musical flourishes that do stand out, and boss fights have more intense themes. The game can be fairly challenging in certain places, but the options you have for your character setup and how coins and purse coins work balance out pretty evenly. The length of the game is pretty decent, and there shouldn't be too much time spent retrying boss fights as long as you're getting a hang of the combat. There's also a bit of side exploration and activities there for you. There isn't a New Game Plus mode, but the speedrun timer option and the open nature of the game could make Fountains a good choice for speedruns if you're into that. For those who are interested in a top-down action RPG and or a Souls-like experience, that's not exactly what's being offered here. Same for those who may be interested in an action-adventure title with more of a focus on puzzles integrated into its gameplay. It doesn't overemphasize one genre over the other, but instead finds a really nice balance between them. If that grabs your attention, then I recommend you check out the Steam store page. But that's it for me. Let me know what you think below. Thanks. Bye.